What is good, everybody? Thank you so much for joining us once again. Another podcast episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm-Up Sessions. Thank you so much for joining us. Episode 51, which is exciting. We just turned the second half of the 50s. Second half of the 50s onto 100. So that's exciting. But of course,
the 50s. I thought you were like second half of 50. I'm like 51. That's still in the first half. I don't know.
No.
Yes.
We're on the way to 100
past the
now.
halfway mark.
Halfway mark, exactly. But of course, like always, taking a sip of coffee before we dive into today's delightful conversation.
Yeah.
This is not the Ethiopia.
No, this is a bad brew. That's what it is. I forgot what coffee I was brewing, and I went to my classic.
I was like, this can't be the Ethiopia. It doesn't smell like it. It smells like an anaerobic natural coffee. I mean, that's what it is, I'm assuming, right?
It's the Tolima.
It's Tolima. Nice. Excellent.
Dude, the main thing about the coffee is that it brews so different than all the other coffees. It just drains.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty under extracted by far.
And it's super weak.
It's unpleasant, yeah, and it's very weak, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Almost tastes like nothing.
I mean, I use the same grind size that we used for the Gucci.
Powerful, dude.
12.
It just went right through there without even touching the grounds.
I looked at the brew bed. I'm like, dude, there's no evidence that actually water went through.
It was
like
just
the
dry.
water level never rose. It was just like, dude, something changed about the grounds. They look a different color. Might be some moisture, but that's about it.
might be signs of a bloom, but that's about it. Wow. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Well, I'm enjoying it.
Just know if you brew a really great coffee poorly, it's gonna taste pretty bad. So there's no saving that. Yeah, wow. That being said, folks, if you want an anaerobic natural, we have a Columbia Tolima on the site, which is just spanking. Strawberries. What else do we have on there? Pear,
dude. Everything.
It's everything. That's literally how I sum up anaerobic coffees. It's everything. So that's what this is. Unfortunately, not a very tasty brew. But that being said, also, like, I think we've had this conversation before, and maybe it's not the podcast to get into, but it's like a lot of these coffees, I think, like the ones that have like a small threshold of like a very small window of good flavor, they're actually hard to brew. And like, if you just don't have, in my opinion, I mean, somebody could disagree with me, but if you just don't have really great gear, unfortunately, the reality is, not that you won't be able to get a good brew out of, like, not that you can't be drinking the coffee,
right?
It's going to be difficult to get what it is out of it. Like, at some point, you're better off just going down the street for a batch brew.
Yeah, this coffee is specifically for folks who use SSP burrs.
What?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just saying, like, because the reason I say that is because I'm thinking, like, how would I brew this coffee, or how have I been brewing this coffee with fellow ode with stock burrs?
Exactly.
I mean, it's calibrated to the finest setting. I removed the little stepless like thing, so I made it stepless.
So you did the EK mod.
I did the mod. I did the Lance Hedrick mod. But still, like, how would you brew it? I say go with the trickle-8. Maybe do something there, dose up. But there's not much you can do.
Or what you could do is, I don't know, maybe that won't. I was thinking for a second, just do like go the finest, but do a batch brew.
That's batch brew, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But you're
right,
also
that's like
that's exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't have a ratio anymore.
Yeah, and that forces you to brew bigger batches all at once.
Mm-hmm.
When you only just want like a cup of it, and when, well, for example, we're selling that coffee in an 8-ounce bag. Now you're like 230 grams. That leaves you four batch brews realistically. 4, maybe 5 you can sneak in there. Yeah, it kind of gets complicated.
It does.
And so
I mean, this is a good plug. If you own a niche, you should be buying this coffee.
That's true. Your niche.
For you.
Yeah.
It's a niche coffee.
That being said, I went over to Nate's and Rachel's, which is our sister and her husband's place, and messed around with their niche. It was a fun little grinder. It feels like a baby to me. Like the first time I saw it in real life, you're like, oh, this thing is like tiny. This thing's literally almost like a little bigger than this craft.
It's pretty small.
Like it's so small.
Yeah.
But yeah, recalibrated that thing through the micro lot San Antonio, which has a similar problem. It's not a problem. It's just like a different way of brewing. Through the San Antonio in there went like fairly fine. Dude, pulled the shot from the first time. It slapped. It slapped. It had the cherry. Yeah. It had the orange that we have, I think, on there as a flavor now. It was great. Honestly, I was pretty pumped about that. So that being said, if you have a niche, you have nothing to worry about. Yeah. But that being said, like we can't disregard the fact that many of you probably have a fellow ode, or many of you have. I don't know how an encore would do, but grinders, I think, on the lower T have more trouble like really fine tuning that exact grind size.
I was brewing it on the Baratza Virtuoso, and it's calibrated to the finer setting. So it's like it has a fine calibration, medium, and a coarse calibration. Yeah. And it's calibrated on the fine setting, and I brewed it at a 12 on V60. And I was getting drawdown times at about 340.
340?
Yeah.
Oh,
and
that's
that was a
excellent.
2-pulse pour.
Oh, that's excellent.
So the fines like really get trapped up in the top of the filter.
Yeah. That's excellent.
It worked.
Yeah, it worked.
So at this point, again, this is a niche coffee, but you don't have to own a niche. You have to own a Baratza Virtuoso.
Or something.
Just don't own a
with range. Something. not to say anything bad about it. No.
I own one,
it's
but
great.
I'm not telling you to own one.
I mean, hopefully someday they release those
V2
burrs or whatever. Yeah. Apparently, I think I saw on the fellow website that they had the SSP burrs on the site, but they were all sold out.
They're all sold out.
Yeah,
dude. I don't know. Hope. I'm going to Coffee Fest New York, and I don't know if Lance listens to this podcast, but I'm gonna just tell Lance from the podcast, dude. Like, pack an extra set of Gorilla burrs for your boy. I'll pick some up.
Extra set. Yeah.
I mean, I wonder what Lance's suitcase looks like. Is it just full of burrs?
Possibly. Yeah. Or full of all kinds of gadgets. Anyways, I mean, that's not what we were talking about. But that's a very, very, very valid conversation to have. But we have some tasty stuff on there if y'all want to pick something up. But it's a bummer this batch just does not taste really great. That's a bummer. Maybe we should just end the podcast here.
No, dude, I'll keep sipping.
Well, this past week, I got to jump behind bar for the first time in ages. Mm-hmm. Folks, ages. I felt rusty. Yeah. I felt like, I don't know. I felt like, like if you were to play soccer in high school, play football in high school or basketball, and it's tryouts, and you haven't stayed fit in shape, and those lines are kicking your butt. That's what I felt like behind bar. I felt crusty. I felt rusty. All the things. Krusty the Clown. Krusty. I felt like Krusty the Clown, making a fool out of myself out there. But I will say, it was a very good experience. First off, I enjoyed the challenge. I enjoyed the fact that I sucked at it, that I was rusty at it. Like, I love that because I'm like, man, I need to figure this out. And my first shift was on a Saturday, and I pretty much walked right into a rush. And I was like, all right, what is it? All hands on board, or
all hands on deck?
All hands on deck. That's literally what I felt like. Was pulling some blend, some First Light, you know. So
some First Light,
some First Light, and
New Light. First Light. New
First
Light. That's John Mayer.
Yeah, it's true. Oh yeah. But that being said, like, I think it was a really good learning experience because I realized, like, the last time I worked behind the bar was maybe 4 years ago. And what the learning experience for me was that I just realized that if I don't ever work behind bar, there's a lot of stuff that I'm just not learning.
Right.
Or that I'm not understanding, or I'm missing out on a lot of data that I could have if I'm working behind the bar. And that's everything. That's from just like noticing what people are ordering. If I wasn't working behind the bar, I wouldn't have known what people order, you know? How many people are ordering shots of espresso or pour overs? How many people are ordering the fun, funky, sweet drinks, you know? Like I just didn't know that until I worked behind bar. And to me, that was like a really big learning experience because, well, yeah, I got to learn that. Yeah. And, from a roaster perspective, that's like a lot of really great information to know, where if you don't have those experiences, you just don't ever know that. But then also things like, I honestly, even though I didn't dial in a shot, but I got to grind, tamp, pull a shot, and see how coffees are pulling. I got to experience that firsthand, and stuff like that. Once again, like if you're just not solely on the roasting side, you don't ever get those experiences of like, okay, this is what baristas are doing behind the bar.
Yeah.
And how my question, a big part of my understanding recently has been like, okay, we're a roaster, but how can we as a roaster not just serve somebody beans? How can we go beyond that? How can we, which we've been doing a very bad job at this. We're gonna hopefully spice it up soon. Release educational content that people can listen to, watch, and learn at home. For example, our pour over video surpassed 100,000 views, and I
didn't know that.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
Insane.
Yeah,
but I'm like, that's the mindset. Is like, how do we stop? How do we just go beyond not just serving really, really amazing coffees that we're excited about, but how do we go beyond that? And from like a barista perspective, is how can we support baristas or cafe owners or coffee shop? Like that experience just gave me a more well-rounded.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we're not serving brown coffee seeds. We're actually serving taste.
Yes.
And if we don't know what that brown coffee seed tastes like, whether it's a pour over, whether it's a cupping, whether it's a French press, batch brew, espresso, we have to know, because that's what we're serving. We're serving taste. We're roasting to taste. Yes, the coffee bean is what we're tasting, but it's the actual experience that we're serving. So it is completely crucial to, the one side of it is you can say, well, you could get feedback. Let's say Makeworth again, let's say Tim. Tim gives you some feedback. Oh, this is what I'm tasting. But even that feedback is limited to, one, Tim's experience, limited to the Makeworth experience. It's different than if you step behind the bar and you experience it and you taste it and you pull it and you serve it. That is much more, that's a holistic experience.
And it's limited to my experience.
It's still limited to your experience, but it's it's holistic in a sense. You can pair that with someone else's experience. You can also take that and bring it back into the roastery, and then when you roast it with a deeper understanding of what that taste is and the taste you're going to be serving.
For sure. And an easy way that, something we've done, for example, like you've worked for the last 2 years, you've been working mostly for Makeworth, and serving our coffees behind bar, which is incredible because there was a lot of information that you learned that was crucial for us and for the better of Makeworth. Once again, it's like a two-way street. It's a partnership where how can we empower the cafe, and how can the cafe turn around and learn from and take from the stuff that the roaster has to offer, which is it's not one is better than the other. It's just they just need to work together. Right. That's why I also think why the roaster and the cafe model together is powerful, and why I also think they're both separately, like a multi-roaster model, is also just as powerful. They just have different upsides to each other. That's a separate topic, but more something we've done was like, okay, this Guatemalan is our predominant choice for espresso. And maybe not saying, man, we're going to make a espresso roast, but taking what you're tasting behind the bar, how it's pulling, how easy is it pulling? Yeah. Can we make this a little an easier experience for somebody? Yeah. And tailor the roasts for that. And then we've also had, another Guatemalan, for example, our San Antonio, the micro lot, which I've been just absolutely loving it. I need to brew it more. But that coffee, we've just taken lighter. We've preserved all of those delicate flavors. And that's definitely tailored more to something probably like a Nordic cafe would enjoy on filter, or like maybe like an interesting espresso. That's kind of tailored to a different audience, maybe, and so that kind of information is absolutely crucial, and it actually goes, I think, beyond just the cafe and bar experience. It's realizing that it's one thing to read certain things behind the books or watching YouTube videos about it, but at some point, for you to gain like a really, really, really deep understanding of something, you just need to go and experience it. Yeah. Like, you can read a lot of books on business. You can watch all the YouTube videos on running a business, running a coffee business. And that will not get you exactly where you need to be on day one of launching the business. Yeah.
Everything you're talking about is exactly why I still work for another coffee company. And it's because...
I'm interested. I didn't know
what?
that.
Yeah, I know. Competition. No. But I'm also excited for, within that scope, like, I worked at Makeworth for such a long time, and I served Mir for such a long time behind the bar there. Now I'm excited for this experience with Narrative, is because to a degree I'm stepping out of the, I guess, quote unquote, echo chamber of Mir. You know what I mean? Now I get to get valuable information from other roasters and how to serve those coffees to folks. But then that information is crucial to, I think, how we're going to view and how I'm going to make decisions when we're buying coffee for Mir. Because that experience is going to teach me so much. Not only is it going to like train my palate to taste like different, like a diverse. I mean, imagine how many more coffees I'm going to be able to experience now.
Of course.
Like way more than I did last year. Of course. You know what I mean?
Of course.
But I'm also going to see other baristas work with those coffees. And I'm going to see many different experiences from a guest perspective.
100%.
Like that kind of knowledge, the experiential knowledge, is priceless. Like Max can't write a book that will give me enough knowledge on 100% that than just me actually experiencing that. Yeah. So there's a lot of beauty and a lot of much deeper understanding of crafts like coffee, like whether it's roasting, whether it's serving it behind the bar, when you actually go and do it. And then at the end of the day, what you were saying makes sense in a sense of like, how are we going to buy green coffee? Because I also visited our friend Julian Friedman, Julian and Company, the real estate. Yeah. I don't know. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. But anyway, visited his office and brewed some coffee. He buys coffee for his office, So I brewed some coffee on their espresso machine just to taste and understand the feedback they were giving me about certain coffees and being like, oh, we prefer this kind of coffee on espresso, or we prefer this, we don't really like this kind of coffee on espresso.
Of course.
And
of course.
there's a lot of information that I can receive by just hearing their feedback, but it's also different when I go get the confirmation or see like, oh, here's something you can tweak to maybe change this in brewing.
Yes.
Because not necessarily the roasting,
Yes.
it's maybe the brewing, or vice versa. It'd be like, yeah, it's definitely the coffee, and it's definitely the way we want to present this coffee, because we kind of have some leverage as roasters to present coffees in different ways.
Yeah, I remember. That's great. That just reminded me of one. For example, like I went over to our cousin's house, and they bought some coffee, and they're like, hey, can you just show us how to brew it and stuff like this? Honestly, if I just dropped off their coffee and left, I'm just trusting that, hey, you know how to enjoy your coffee. I'm just gonna leave that up to you. Like it's like what is it? Like that phrase, like you can't pour my cereal or you can't make my waffles. Do you know what I'm talking about?
You got me. I have no idea.
Okay, never mind. I'm just like, hey, I'm just gonna trust that you know how to make your coffee best for your personal self. And they have one of those like in the wall machines. Like this thing's a beast of a machine, costs thousands of dollars. It's sleek. It just looks seamless. It's inside of a freaking wall, you guys. It has like a built-in grinder, a pour over, everything. You can literally brew a coffee from Costco so you can come home in time to have an espresso waiting for you. You know, like
coffee's always fresh. It's like vacuum sealed inside of a wall.
I know. Yeah. So for me, a big learning experience was showing up, and they're like, "Hey, can you brew this for us?" And I tried to brew it, and I've realized like, oh, this machine actually struggles to brew such a light roast.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't there actually trying to do that, I would just say, oh, well, I don't know, all the things that you could say, like, oh, you just don't have the right palate, or, oh, you just don't like it. Well, in reality, they just didn't get the coffee out of the coffee. Like they didn't get the full experience. And because what they were working with was limiting. And from that day on, I was like, oh, so some people actually, it's better for them to give them a different coffee that maybe we don't roast because it's going to fit there more. And that's just data. That's just information from firsthand experience. Like I love that you said experiential knowledge. And that also reminds me of like, green coffee buying. Like there are things we're still learning as well when we're buying green coffee. Like it's just a lot of the nuances, the questions to ask, the things to look forward to. Just firsthand, like cupping samples is again that experiential knowledge that you just can't know just from reading a post, reading a tweet or
it's a completely different ballgame, because that's one thing I feel like we're missing. We still haven't traveled to origin together. Even though we've been to like nations of origin, like you've been to Guatemala, and I've been to Indonesia, and we've been around at origin, but we haven't intentionally traveled to origin for the purpose of coffee. So it's like stuff like that it changes, and people say like, man, what can happen? Like, how does your view on sustainability just like change just because you went and met a farmer? But there's something experiential in that really helps you understand what it means to be sustainable. You might not be able to move and like for a whole harvest and spend, months or weeks harvesting with the farmer. Yeah. But you'll sit down face to face, have dinner, visit the farm, and it might be just a little peek into the life of a producer. And that experience changes completely how you view green coffee buying and how you source coffee and just the future plans you make for your company. Like that changes. Like there's no like, you look at folks like Onyx Coffee Importers and the relationships they've like fostered in the community they've kind of cultivated throughout the years of being an importing exporting company, and like they're long standing, you know what I mean? And that has to do with an experience.
Of course.
It's not just emails, even though emails are part of the experience. I'm not saying that. Of course. Yeah. But it's so much deeper when you like go to Origin, you see some faces, shake some hands, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was just about to say, I'm reminded of like our conversation with Edwin. On the podcast here. If you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to it. It's probably one of the best podcasts. Or go back and listen to Taylor's podcast with you. Oh,
that's another one. Yeah.
Where we literally talk to our buddy Taylor, who we work with in Indonesia. He's living there right now on the ground. And the stories that he has to say, the things that he has to share, the insights that he has into the families of farmers and producers that automatically make his perspective of sustainability far beyond an Instagram post, far beyond a tweet, a feel-good story repost, whatever it is. And the crazy thing is he's actually not posting very much about it. But he's in the trenches there, and the stuff that he tells us personally is like, man, that's stuff like that. You just don't. You can't just learn from an Instagram post. Even though those things aren't bad. Yeah, those things are good. But my motivation, I think, with also now listening to this podcast as we go through is like, if you have an opportunity, don't be afraid to take something. Sometimes you just need to dive into it. Yeah. Because there's a lot of learning that happens on the other end. And realizing that if you're not just a barista, sorry, I'm going to rephrase that. If you're a barista, you're going to learn a lot of things that a barista learns. Right. That's unique. That's great. But if if you're going to become a roaster, you're learning different things. Maybe you want to get into green coffee buying. Maybe you want to work for an importing company. You're going to learn things specific to those areas of your work, which is exciting. Because, well, first off, like there's a lot to learn that you can't just learn from the books, like it has to be experiential. You have to be there. You have to experience the good, the highs and the lows to get the full experience and learn these things. And that's exciting. That means that, hey, if you're working as a barista, there's still so much to learn. Yeah. And for us as roasters, there's still so much to learn outside of just roasting a good coffee, making it taste good, and selling it to people.
You can't minimize any link in the supply chain for sure. Either.
I don't want to come off that way at all.
I don't think you are. I'm just confirming the fact is that you can't. Because the way I see it is like, let's say you're mastering a track, and you have, the drums recorded, you have the guitar, the vocals. You have, I don't know, if you're like one of those musicians that has 100 instruments and you have every ding and dang, and you're taking all of those in there. Sounds, the triangle ding, you're taking all of those sounds and you're mastering it to create a beautiful collective sound. Yeah. Or whether you're editing a photo and you masked this part, you edited this part, but then the photo as itself stands like on its own, or the track sounds like one collective piece of sound, but if you open it up, there's multiple layers there. And I think that's what happens if you are a barista, you understand what's going on between the point of a guest ordering a drink at POS to delivering it. Of course. But then when you experience roasting, you understand what it means to connect to the farmer and then connect to the cafe owner. Yeah. And then you take a step back. When you put all of those things together, you get a much more collective experience. And then within that, a much more collective understanding of how can you effectively serve quality taste. Yeah. Because it's defined by every single link in the supply chain.
For sure.
That's also key to sustainability. Yeah. I think I also want to take time to just also say that not everybody can do that. It's also not maybe physically possible for every barista to have a little roasting experience, a little origin experience. That's not possible. But I think what we're saying is we're encouraging folks that if you can, it's worth the experience. Yes. It's worth the commitment. It's worth your finances. It's worth your time. Yeah. If you have those opportunities, like, be open and available to take them. Yeah, because they will change everything.
Exactly. I think that's solid. And that's where I was actually thinking of, like, landing the plane is literally on that nose that it's not the point is not to have like 100 jobs in coffee. That's not the point. It's more like, if you want to learn more, if you want to grow, if you're interested in a specific part of the industry, you're going to learn a lot more than by getting a job, getting right in the thick of it. That's going to be the best learning experience for you than anything else. Getting right in the middle of it, and I always remember back to when I was working at the Woods Roastery. I was working at the roastery, and we had a guest come in from Alaska, and he was like, I guess this big shot. And back then, I had no idea who this guy was. I was talking to him, and he asked me what I was planning to do in coffee. And at that time, I really wanted to open up a cafe really badly. And he was just like, just think about it. It's not as easy as you think. And he's like, just realize that you don't have to open up a cafe to work in coffee.
Right. Yeah.
He's like, there are very many jobs. He's like, you could actually work in importing green coffee, exporting green coffee. You could work as a roaster on the roaster side. And as he was telling me this is a very beginning stages of my like coffee journey. And I was like, gosh, all of that just sounds so intimidating. Like, it felt like starting a cafe was more attainable than working with green coffee.
Yeah.
It was weird because I think we have this perspective. I think a lot of people have this perspective that if you want to go work in coffee, you just work behind the bar. But there's so much more to explore. And that's what, I would just want to encourage folks is that if your interest is being piqued, get in there.
Yeah, that's very good. Nothing else to say.
Wow, folks. He just said nothing else to say. That's it.
You nailed it.
That's it. Sweet. Well, folks, in the meantime, remember to reflect what's good.
And keep your stick on the ice.